Hello. And I said, if you looked at my other book reading for today, I said my troll squirrel that I meant to say that Michelle Bertram made was on the left, but it was on my left, but you're right. It's not a big deal, but clearing that up. It was so great to see Michelle Bertram was on live last night. Crafty Farm Gal. I love her. Love you all. You know what I'm going to say. Okay, I believe this is, well, I know it's Little Men. I think it's chapter 17, part 2. Could I see anybody's soul with this microscope if I looked hard? Asked Demi, who was much impressed with the power of the bit of glass. No, dear, it's not powerful enough for that, and never can be made so. You must wait a long while before your eyes are clear enough to see the most invisible of God's wonders. But looking at the lovely things you can see will help you to understand the lovelier things you cannot see, answered Uncle Fritz, with his hand on the boy's head. Well, Daisy and I both think that if there are any angels, their wings look like butterflies, as we see it through the glass, only more soft and gold. Believe it if you like, and keep your own little wings as bright and beautiful, only don't fly away for a long time yet. No, I won't, and Demi kept his word. Goodbye, my boys. I must go now, but I'll leave you with our new professor of natural history. And Mrs. Joe went away, well pleased with that composition day. Yep, that was chapter 17, composition day. And if I had known I had only that little tiny bit left to go, I would have finished up. So, I'm going to go. That only took 2 minutes. So, I'm going to go on to chapter 18, entitled Crops. Sorry, I'm not picking my nose. It always itches when I read. I guess just vibrations. The vibrations. Sorry, I forgot my squirrel scarf when I read the On the Banks book, which I probably called Little House. Crops. The gardens did well that summer, and in September the little crops were gathered in with much rejoicing. Jack and Ned joined their farms and raised potatoes, those being a good, saleable article. They got 12 bushels, counting little ones and all, and sold them to Mr. Bear at a fair price. For potatoes went fast in that house, I bet. I love potatoes, any kind. Any kind. I love a good baked one, loaded with the cheese and the bacon and the butter and the sour cream and all the stuff. Chives. Oh, it's making me hungry. Sold them to Mr. Bear, if they went fast. Emil and Franz devoted themselves to corn and had a jolly little husking in the barn. A corn shucking. I love corn too. After which they took their corn to the mill and came proudly home with enough cornmeal to supply the family with hasty pudding. Never had it. I do love cornbread too, though. That was my dad's favorite. He'd put it in milk, a glass of milk, and eat it. That was his favorite thing. And Johnny cake, which I think is kind of like a pancake, but I guess with cornmeal. They would not take money for their crop because, as Franz said, we never can pay Uncle for all he has done for us if we raised corn for the rest of our days. And how true. Nat had beans in such abundance that he despaired of ever shelling them till Mrs. Joe proposed a new way, which succeeded admirably. The dry pods were spread upon the barn floor. Nat fiddled, and the boys danced quadrilles on them till they were thrashed out with much merriment and very little labor. It looks like they would get squished, but I guess they would be hard, so. Tommy's 6 weeks beans were a failure. for a dry spell early in the season hurt them because he gave them no water, and after that, he was so sure that they could take care of themselves, he let the poor things struggle with bugs and weeds till they were exhausted and died a lingering death. So Tommy had to dig his farm over again and plant peas. I love sugar peas. Mr. Bod doesn't, but I do. But they were late. The birds ate many. The bushes, not being firmly planted, blew down, and when the poor peas came at last, no one cared for them. As their day was over and spring lamb had grown into mutton, Tommy consoled himself with a charitable effort, for he transplanted all the thistles he could find and tended them carefully for Toby, who was fond of the prickly delicacy and had eaten all he could find on the place. The boys had great fun over Tom's thistle bed, but he insisted that it was better to care for poor Toby than for himself, and declared that he would devote his entire farm next year to thistles, worms, and snails, that Demi's turtles and Nat's pet owl might have the food they loved. So that's cool, as well as the donkey. So like shiftless, kind-hearted, happy-go-lucky Tommy. Demi had supplied his grandmother with lettuce all summer, and in autumn sent his grandfather a basket of turnips. Never have liked those. Love turnip greens, though. Each one scrubbed up till it looked like a great white egg. His grandma was fond of salad, and one of Grandpa's favorite quotations was, Lucillus, whom frugality could charm, ate roasted turnips at the Sabine farm. I'm sure that's a well-known quote from something that I don't know what it is. Therefore, these vegetable offerings to the dear domestic god and goddess were affectionate, appropriate, and classical. Daisy had nothing but flowers in her little plot, and it bloomed all summer long with a succession of gay or fragrant posies. She was very fond of her garden and delved away in it at all hours, watching over her roses and pansies, sweet peas, and mignonette, I don't know what that is, as faithfully and tenderly as she did over her dolls or her little friends. Little nosegays, which are little bouquets, were sent into town on all occasions, and certain vases about the house were her especial care. She had all sorts of pretty fancies excuse me, about her flowers, and loved to tell the children the story of the pansy, and show them how the stepmother leaf sat up in her green chair in purple and gold, how the two own children in gay yellow had its little seat, while the stepchildren in dull colors both sat on one small stool, and the poor little father in his red nightcap was kept out of sight in the middle of the flower, that a monk's dark face looked out of the monk's hood larkspur. All these are flowers. And the flowers of the canary vine were so like dainty birds fluttering their yellow wings that one almost expected to see them fly away. And the snapdragons that went off like little pistol shots when you cracked them. Splendid dollies did she make out of scarlet and white poppies, with ruffled robes tied round the waist with grass blade sashes, and astonishing hats of, some kind of plant or flower. And it's hyphenated because it's at the end of a line. Cropsis. Let me see if I can look that word up. Look it up. Yes, dictionary. What? It says the dictionary for this language is not on my device, so Michelle or somebody. on their green heads. I know it's a kind of a plant. Pea pod boats with rose leaf sails received these flower people and floated them about a placid pool in the most charming style. For finding that there were no elves, Daisy made her own and loved the fanciful little friends who played their parts in her summer life. So it sounds like she's making little, what do you call it, little fairy gardens. Nan went in for herbs and had a fine display of useful plants which she tended with steadily increasing interest and care. Very busy was she in September, cutting, drying, and tying up her sweet harvest, and writing down in a little book how the different herbs are to be used. But she tried several experiments and made several mistakes, so she wished to be particular lest she should give little Huz another fit by administering wormwood instead of catnip. Dick, Dolly, and Rob each grubbed away on his small farm and made more stir about it than all the rest put together. Parsnips and carrots were the crops of the two Dees, so Dick and Dolly, and they longed for it to be late enough to pull up the precious vegetables. Dick did privately examine his carrots and plant them again, feeling that Silas was right in saying it was too soon for them yet. Rob's crop was 4 small squashes. I love squash too. And 1 immense pumpkin. It really was a bouncer, as everyone said, and I assure you that 2 small persons could sit on it side by side. It seemed to have absorbed all the goodness of the little garden and all the sunshine that shone down on it, and lay there a great round golden ball full of rich suggestions of pumpkin pies for weeks to come. Robbie was so proud of his mammoth vegetable that he took everyone to see it, and when frost began to nip, covered it each night with an old bed quilt. He didn't want any frost on his pumpkin. And tucking it round as if the pumpkin was a well-beloved baby. The day it was gathered, he would let no one touch it but himself, and nearly broke his back tugging it to the barn in his little wheelbarrow, with Dick and Dolly harnessed in front to give a heave up the path. His mother promised him that the Thanksgiving pies should be made from it, and hinted vaguely that she had a plan in her head which would cover the prize pumpkin and its owner with glory. Could make a jack-o'-lantern out of it and then use the meat of the pumpkin for pies. Poor Billy had planted cucumbers, but unfortunately hoed them up and left the pigweed. This mistake grieved him very much. For 10 minutes. Then he, yeah, I guess it says Tim, T-E-M. Then he forgot all about it and sewed a handful of bright buttons which he had collected, evidently thinking in his feeble mind that they were money and would come up and multiply so that he might make many quarters as Tommy did. That's funny. No one disturbed him, and he did what he liked with his plot, which soon looked as if a series of small earthquakes had stirred it. When the general harvest day came, he would have nothing but stones and weeds to show, if kind old Asia had not hung half a dozen oranges on the dead tree he stuck up in the middle. So she put the oranges there. Billy was delighted with this crop, and no one spoiled his pleasure in the little miracle which pity wrought for him by making withered branches bear strange fruit. Stuffy had various trials with his melons, for being impatient to taste them, he had a solitary revel before they were ripe, and made himself so ill that for a day or two it seemed doubtful if he would ever eat any more. But he pulled through and served up his first cantaloupe without tasting a mouthful himself. They were excellent melons, for he had a warm slope for them, and they ripened fast. The last and best were lingering on the vines, and Stuffy had announced that he should sell them to a neighbor. This disappointed the boys, who had hoped to eat the melons themselves, and they expressed their displeasure in a new and striking manner. Going one morning to gaze upon the 3 fine watermelons which he had kept for the market, Stuffy was horrified to find the word pig cut in white letters on the green rind, staring at him from every one. He was in a great rage and flew to Mrs. Joe for redress. She listened, condoled with him, and then said, "If you want to turn the laugh, I'll tell you how, but you must give up the melons." "Well, I will, for I can't thrash all the boys, but I'd like to give them something to remember, the mean sneaks," growled Stuff, still in a fume. Now, Mrs. Joe was pretty sure who had done the trick, for she had seen 3 heads suspiciously near to one another in the sofa corner the evening before, and when these heads had nodded with chuckles and whispers, this experienced woman knew mischief was afoot. A moonlight night, a rustling in the old cherry tree near Emil's window, a cut on Tommy's finger, all helped to confirm her suspicions. And having cooled Stuffy's wrath a little, she bade him bring his maltreated melons to her room and say not a word to any one of what had happened. He did so, and the 3 wags were amazed to find their joke so quietly taken. It spoiled the fun, and the entire disappearance of the melons made them uneasy. So did Stuffy's good nature, for he looked more placid and plump than ever, and surveyed them with an air of calm pity that perplexed them very much. And I'm going to stop there, guys. But this is turning out to be a fun chapter, isn't it? All right. Have a blessed day. Friday the 13th. I'm not at all, what do you call it? Superstitious. I say not at all, maybe. But if anything, how about a squirrel and a possum? I'd love to have a screenshot like that. And wish I could get all the squirrels in. Let's see if we can lower these shelves. We're going to have to do something around here to change stuff up a bit. It'll be after Christmas when my Lindsay gets here. And I haven't mentioned my stepdaughter Andrea when I talk about being able to get all my girls' stuff. But I got her taken care of too. Or you guys help me. Look how when I put this up, it makes everything go red. But I love this sign. Thank you, Jessica A. Noble, and your little Izzy's cross. This way. And April's, and Helen's, Kathy, all the stuff y'all have given me to display. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. And live at 5, and there may be a Happy Mail. I got some cards. I mean, I know there'll be a Happy Mail video. I'm just not sure when I'll, probably before live at 5. I still have to wait on the mail to come here. Because I think something's coming here, and maybe something I've ordered, but anyway. Love to you all. Thank you so much for your help and everything, and I'll talk more about that on live today. Mwah! See you later.